Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Ethan Rosen, Assistant Director at Predictit, the stock market for politics. We're going to take a look at some local Ohio elections and discuss some of the implications it could potentially have on the national scale. Ethan, it's great to see you again. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And the first one I want to kick it off with is the Ohio Senate seat and J.D. Vance. It's really interesting to see what endorsements and not mean for these candidates here.
Sure. First of all, great to be with you. So last Friday, Trump endorsed J.D. Vance, and on Predictit at that time, he was trading in the 20s and 30s. He'd actually dipped into the teens at one point. He had gone into fourth place even at one point. His campaign did seem to be on life support. Now, this endorsement has propelled him to an undisputed number one at 70% odds on Predictit compared to Josh Mandel at 24%, Mike Gibbons at 10%. A couple of things here that are important to note. A lot of conservatives are really rejecting J.D. Vance, and they don't like Trump's endorsement of him. In part, this is funnily enough because he's made anti-Trump comments in the past. In 2016, he went as far as comparing him to Hitler, but Trump says that they're all good. One thing to consider here is that, as you see on the screen, there are 5 candidates who are probably going to get, at least high single digits, if not into the double digits, which means that a small bump for Vance from the endorsement, something that would get him into, 30, 35%, could be enough to push him into the lead.
And then also in Ohio, we're taking a look at the gubernatorial race as well, where we're also seeing a reversal of fortune.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. On Predictit right now, Governor Mike DeWine, the incumbent, is at a 95% chance to win. And part of the reason why we wanted to talk about this is because this was not always the case. He was seen as one of the more likely politicians, governor or senator, to lose a primary to a challenger. He was among Republican governors. He was one of the most pro-COVID measures, pro-lockdowns, pushing vaccines. He pushed back against Trump's election fraud claims, and he seemed right for a challenger. Now, some things worked out in his favor. He didn't get a big endorsement from against him from Trump, although a couple of his challengers were endorsed by Trump-adjacent people. But another thing to consider, and we're seeing this in Alaska, we're seeing this in Idaho, we're seeing this in a few other places, and Georgia in particular, is that you get these candidates who have strong local brands, and they become the favorites to win back against opponents who seem to mostly be there, for nationalized reasons, because, the 2020 election or whatnot. Those candidates are not particularly competitive against these strong local incumbents.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when we were just talking about J.D. Vance before, the endorsement meant something. And then here, when you look at it more localized, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. And it makes you wonder if this is a move from the larger conservative faction to break away from Trump, or a bit of the outliers from the party that we're seeing. And it's not just the Republican Party, the Democratic Party is also grappling with outliers as well. But on a national level here, what do you think, or what are Predictit traders thinking when it comes to a majority in the House?
Sure. So a couple of things here. Predictit traders think that Republicans have a very good chance of winning the majority in the House. They think there's about an 85 to 90% chance that Republicans will take the majority in the midterm elections. They would only need to gain about 5 seats in order to take that majority from what they won in the 2020 election. The national climate seems favorable to Republicans for a number of reasons. That said, their redistricting may benefit Democrats to some degree. So it's still a little bit up in the air, but Predictit traders are pretty confident on Republicans to take it.
All right, Ethan, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you for having me.